So, Florida, Grace of Power, good morning and welcome to this 2024 Annual General Meeting of the Welsh Ambulance Service University Trust. A couple of housekeeping points to mention just as we begin. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available later, and it's also being live streamed by Facebook. It is a public meeting. We can take questions from the public, and you can send those questions to us during the live broadcast, either via the Zoom webinar or by the Facebook page. And also, if you have sent us a question in advance by email, we will be answering those questions at the end of the agenda, which is a question and answer session. So the first thing to do is to introduce ourselves. I'll introduce myself first. I'll then ask Jason, our Chief Executive, to do the same. But as you can see on the screen there, my name is Colin Dennis. I'm an independent member of the board and the chair of the Trust Board. And Jason, perhaps you could just introduce yourself, and then we'll hand over to the other panelists to briefly introduce themselves.
Borodar Chryso Palb, I'm Jason Killens. I'm the Chief Executive here at the Welsh Ambulance Service.
Jason, do you want to hand over to one of our executives and then they'll sort of hand over in turn?
Sure. Let's start with Rachel, if we can, please. Rachel Marsh.
Good morning, all. Chryso, my name's Rachel Marsh. I'm the Executive Director of Strategy, Planning and Performance.
Rachel, would you like to hand over to somebody, like pass the parcel?
I'll pass over to Liam.
My name is Liam Williams, and I'm the Executive for Quality and Nursing. And I shall pass on to Andy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Swinburne. I'm Executive Director of Paramedicine. I'll pass over to Johnny.
Thank you, Borodar. Johnny Samu, Director of Digital Services. I'll pass over to Angie.
Borodar, I'm Angie Lewis, Director for People and Culture. I'll pass over to Trish.
Borodar Chryso Palb. Good morning, welcome everybody. I'm Trish Mills. I'm the Director of Corporate Governance and the Board Secretary, and I'll pass over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Trish. Good morning, all. Borodar Palb. I'm Chris Turley. I'm the Executive Director of Finance and Corporate Resources. And I'll hand over to you, Estelle.
Borodar Palb, good morning. I'm Estelle Hitch and I'm Director of Partnerships and Engagement. I'm not sure if my colleague Lee Brooks has yet joined the call. So I'm just looking at who I might hand over to. I may indeed hand over to one of my non-exec colleagues. So if I could hand over to you, Kerry.
Borodar, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. My name's Kerry Jackson. I'm the Vice Chair of the Trust Board and a Non-Executive Director, and I'll hand over to Bethan Evans.
Borodar Palb, croeso cynnes heddiw. My name's Bethan Evans. I'm one of the non-exec directors, and I also chair the QUEST, the Quality and Patient Safety and Experience Committee. I'll hand over to Hannah.
Diolch, Bethan. Hello, Hannah Dewey. My name's Hannah. I'm one of the non-exec directors as well, and I chair the Academic Partnerships Committee. And I will hand on to Peter.
Diolch, Hannah. Borodar Palb, my name is Peter Curran. I'm also a non-executive director, and I chair the Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee. I will pass on to, he says, moving his screen rapidly, Hugh Parry.
Borodar Palb, croeso. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Hugh Parry, Trade Union Partner.
Thank you, Hugh. I'm not sure whether we've missed anybody else out, but if we have, I apologise, and I think we'll move on. That's good for introduction. So thank you very much, everybody, for doing that. And I'm going to now give you a brief review of the agenda items. They're there on the screen. We will start by confirming the minutes of the meeting from last year, 2023. We will then move on to present the annual report and accounts overview. We will then move on to look at the audited financial accounts and then to the year in review. There will be the accountability report. We're then going to spotlight two special areas of our service. The first is palliative care and the second is mental health. We shall conclude the formal part with a forward look, and then we'll be taking the questions which I mentioned before. And also during the course of this presentation, there will be frequent references to our very important volunteers. So I'll move to the first formal item on the agenda, which is to confirm the minutes of the meeting that took place in September 2023. Now, these minutes are available online. They're on the AGM notice page as advertised in the advertisement for this meeting. These minutes are formally for approval, and they need to be approved by the voting members of the Trust Board, which are those individuals, or some of those individuals contained there in the panelists that you've been hearing from just a moment ago. So can I ask those voting members of the Trust Board, if there are any abstentions or anybody wishing to object to these minutes, if you could make that known now by signalling your abstention or your refusal to accept. I'm not seeing anybody objecting or abstaining, and therefore I can conclude that these minutes have been approved by the board. So thank you very much for that approval. We formally confirm the approval of the minutes of last year's AGM. So we now move on to the second formal item of the meeting, which is to present the annual report and accounts. As you will see from the slide, they are in three main parts. I'm not going to read all of that out, but just to summarize, part one looks at how the trust has performed during the year. Part two, essentially looking to see how the trust manages risks. And part three is the section that shows us how we have been spending the money that we have received. These accounts have been presented slightly later than normal. Normally, this AGM takes place a bit earlier in the year, but they are here for presentation. And the various sections that follow will take more detail to present these report and accounts. So I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who will take us through the next section of this meeting. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning again, all. It's a pleasure just to spend a couple of minutes to present in a little bit of detail, not too much, you'd be glad to hear, the 2023-24 financial accounts of the Trust. In doing so, I'll just briefly talk about where we landed in terms of a position, delivery of our statutory duties, the process those accounts went to from both a draft accounts perspective and an audited perspective, some analysis of income, a little bit of analysis of how we spend our money and expenditure, and that includes both revenue and capital. Thank you, Alex. So the accounts this year, the Chair just made reference then to this AGM being a little bit later, and part of that was linked to some of the timings around the delivery of the final certified set of accounts, which was extended a little bit later than it had been in more recent years, which landed in us having to have our accounts submitted to government and then certified by the Auditor General for Wales by the 15th of July. The process for doing so was draft accounts were submitted following the end of the financial year at the 31st of March. Those draft accounts were then submitted on the 3rd of May. Within which we presented a set of accounts that showed all our statutory financial duties were met. They then went and they were then subject to a very detailed audit undertaken by Audit Wales. The headline value within the accounts, if you like, certainly from a revenue perspective, was a effective balance break-even position that manifested itself through a retained surplus of £85,000 set against the over £300 million funding we received. So, for all intents and purposes, a balanced landing position. The real pleasing bit for me as the finance director, but for the organisation generally, is that yet again those set of accounts received an unqualified and clean audit opinion in the sense of them being a true and fair view of the finances of the accounts in the 2023-24 financial year, but also pleasingly were not subject to any other regulatory or any other opinion or qualification by Audit Wales. So the process then was concluded early July, presented and approved to our Audit and Risk and Assurance Committee on the 10th of July, Trust Board on the 12th, signed off by the Auditor General for Wales on Friday, the 12th of July in the afternoon, ahead of that deadline, which was on the Monday, the 15th of July. So the detail within the accounts is available online, and I won't go through that in any detail today, but I just wanted to pull out a few headline values. As I say, we delivered all of our statutory duties within both that draft and then the final audited accounts, which were a lot, but from a materiality perspective, unchanged from that which were within the draft. And the headline values, we don't just have to break even from a revenue perspective. That's a key one clearly, and a headline one that sits within the accounts. But we also have other statutory duties to deliver, as well as the revenue income that we receive and delivering that within budget. We have to deliver similarly for our capital expenditure, which I'll come on to briefly in a second in terms of the funding sources for that, which are slightly separate, but again, we have to deliver to that. And we also have a requirement as part of the NHS in Wales to deliver on what's known as the public sector payment policy, which is 95% of our third party, for like non-NHS invoices are paid within 30 days. And we've delivered that year on year. And in fact, we deliver it month on month throughout the year. So the headline values within the accounts, and you can see the variation from the previous year within the table on the right-hand side there as well, is that we've now tripped over for the first time total income and therefore total expenditure on that break-even basis within the trust of income and expenditure in the year of being over £300 million. There are some detailed notes within the accounts if you so wish to look at the detail behind it. In terms of the income, there are notes 3 and 4 of our accounts, as you would understand from an income perspective as an NHS trust and as a commissioned service within the NHS in Wales. The vast majority of our revenue income comes via our commissioners, what was the EASC committee on behalf of health boards, now the NHS Joint Commissioning Committee. But we do get some other income direct from health boards, some from other sources, but the vast majority comes through those commissioning arrangements for both our emergency service, emergency medical service, our non-emergency patient transport service, which did have a slightly different funding route in the past. That's all now amalgamated through that committee, and the one slight nuance which has changed for the future going forward under the JCC now was that the income that we were receiving for the growing 111 service as we developed that over recent years came through a slightly different route via one health board, but that's now been consolidated into those agreements too. If you move on, Alex, please, I can pick up the rest under the next 2 slides I've got. So this is how we spend our money. The detailing from a revenue perspective, which is the revenue spend on this pie chart here, is detailed through note 5 of the accounts. But as you can expect, and is not an untypical pattern for most NHS public sector bodies, is 70+% of our costs are on staffing. The next single biggest one then is what we call non-pay, and that I know, and some of that is kind of direct staff related expenditure. But for our organisation, compared to some other parts of the NHS in Wales, we have a couple of items in there that are greater than others. Fuel, and surprisingly, as an ambulance service, we spend quite a bit on vehicle fuel. And vehicle repair and maintenance are 2 items that pop up in there, but that is also where we would incur, establishment expenses, heating, lighting, utilities, water, that type of stuff. Some of the small amounts then are there. We do purchase a very small amount of healthcare provision support from third-party other providers. And non-cash is a bit of a technical term in the context of it, but there are some costs which are booked into our accounts, particularly the revenue costs of capital expenditure, which don't attract cash transactions. Last one for me then, Alex, I think. Thanks. So capital expenditure is a slightly different route. We don't get our capital via our commissioners in the way in which we get our revenue funding. As an NHS statutory body, one of the 12 statutory bodies within the NHS in Wales, we have exactly the same relationship directly with Welsh Government for our capital funding. So we receive capital funding in 2 ways. We submit business cases for larger capital items of expenditure, and we get an annual discretionary amount of somewhere around the £5 to £6 million value within our capital expenditure limit year on year. That, as the name suggests, is at our discretion to prioritise within some of the smaller things we need to do from a capital perspective. Capital, of course, being expenditure that is more longer term for items which gives us value more than 1 year. So it's very rarely, there's a small amount of staffing which we can capitalise, but it's very rarely, it's very different. This is not paying people. This is buying things, buying kit, buying equipment. And surprisingly, as you can see for there again, as an ambulance service, a big chunk of our capital expenditure in any given year is on buying and converting vehicles. We have a rolling replacement programme of our vehicles to replace older vehicles as they become ready for replacement with newer vehicles. With new vehicles, we have a committed programme and strategic outline case with government to support that. There has been some challenges of late in terms of being able to completely keep up to speed with that, but we prioritise the funding that we have in that to make sure that we try to keep our fleet as modernised as we possibly can, with some moves into some other parts of fleet technology going forward, including for this financial year now, with the money we are getting for this financial year, we're looking to develop some of our first fully electric response vehicles at a single response level. So not a big ambulance, but a single response, sort of old RRV type vehicle, a car or van-based vehicle. A small number of them we've started a pilot moving into fully electric. The rest of our capital broadly goes on kit, equipment, estates. We did a bit less probably in estates. It does peak and trough a bit as we go through years. So we did a little bit less, and I probably will do a little bit more this year on some of our estate in terms of proportionate spend. Clearly, as we move into delivering on some of our digital enablement within the organisation, we're increasingly looking to spend as much as we can proportionately on some of our digital and ICT, and then there's some other equipment that we clearly need to buy. The full detail of the capital expenditure, and there's quite a detailed set of notes 13 and 14 within the accounts, that sort of shows how that capital expenditure in year then impacts on our balance sheet asset value. So you get your starting balances, your capital expenditure, depreciation charges on an annual basis, and other adjustments to end then with a closing asset value within our balance sheet, and all that maps through those couple of notes in any detail for anyone who's inclined to work through that. And that was all I was going to say in terms of presenting the accounts as they currently stand. But as with others today, no doubt, I'm more than happy to take questions on those as if and when they're received. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Chris. So we're now going to look back at 23-24, a year in review. The year was full of challenges and opportunities for us as an organisation. It's a year in which, as every year, I'm immensely proud of the contribution and the service of all of our people, both our staff and volunteers across our one national team here in West. And I want to take this opportunity to formally thank each and every one of our people for their hard work and dedication through 23 and 24. I'm going to ask colleagues from the team to take us through a look at what's happened for our patients, our people, for value and sustainability, and for partners and our systems. I think our Director of Operations, Lee Brooks, is continuing to have problems getting in to the call this morning. So Rachel, can I ask you to pick up Lee's slides, please, around our patients, and then Liam, Angie, Chris will take us through the other three areas. So Rachel, over to you, please, on the story of our patients in 23-24.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason. Good morning, everyone. Apologies, okay. My technology was troublesome this morning, but I am here, so I shall kick off. So first of all, I'd like to start by highlighting our non-emergency patient transport service. We closely monitor the experiences of renal users who, of course, require multiple transport a week. We are pleased to report that a significant number of our service users continue to receive transport within our target times. I just wanted to mention that just recently I had the opportunity to visit some of our dedicated teams, including the renal hub, which plays a key part in this measure, where I saw firsthand how the passion and commitment of our people are at the heart of the service that we provide. And I'm particularly excited as well about a new pilot initiative we've launched coming into this year, pairing volunteer car drivers with oncology patients undergoing treatment, which we hope will enhance patient experience during what is, of course, a challenging time for many. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage anyone who's interested in volunteering to keep an eye on our adverts online or via social media. Your support really could make a meaningful difference. Thank you. Moving on to the 111 service. The chart on the left represents the percentage of abandoned calls, with our aim being to keep this below 5%. The year has been one of two distinct halves. In the first half, we successfully met our target with stable demand and a well-staffed service. When comparing this period to the previous year, we can see clear improvements, which demonstrates the positive impact of efforts. On the right-hand side, you'll see the time patients wait for clinical assessment. While the early part of this year saw a slight deterioration, while the early part of this calendar year saw a slight deterioration in performance in both charts, this was expected due to a significant IT system upgrade that took place in March and into April. Training all our staff in the new system meant temporarily diverting resources. Despite our efforts to mitigate the impact, there was a short-term dip in performance. However, we are pleased to share that implementation itself was a success, thanks to the hard work of our teams, and this will no doubt provide further opportunities in the future for improvement, which perhaps we might discuss next year. Thank you. We'll come now to our 999 service. Both in terms of activity and responsiveness, winter 23-24 showed improvements compared to the same period in 22-23. It's particularly encouraging to note that the longest wait times this past winter were shorter than the previous year, and the overall activity was more stable. While it's not shown on this slide, I'd also like to highlight that our median call pickup time remains consistently between 2 and 3 seconds. When it comes to our emergency medical service response times, on the next slide, we recognise that our current performance, whether it's the red percentage within 8 minutes or the amber median 65th or 95th percentiles, are not where we want them to be. It's important to acknowledge that there are tangible negative impacts, both in terms of patient outcomes and experience. As many will be aware, these issues have been reported on extensively, particularly in the media. That said, we have seen more consistency in our performance over the last year compared to the year before. I'd like to take a moment to break down the red performance, though, in more detail, which is the next slide. The performance measure we report is somewhat blunt, as it doesn't always reflect the full picture. This chart shows the 3 years of red activity, focusing on the number of incidents responded to within 8 minutes, alongside the percentage of calls met within that time frame. While the percentage for 23-24 shows improvement over the 22-23 year, the real story lies in the significant increase in red activity itself. Over the last 2 years, we've managed to respond to more incidents within 8 minutes, and in 23-24, we saw a 13% increase in responses in 8 minutes compared to the previous year. This improvement is a direct result of the commitment and hard work of our staff, who, despite mounting pressures, continue to do everything possible to provide the people of Wales with the best service. Notably, improvements in staff attendance, better roster creation, and a focused approach to how we dispatch have contributed to the progress. My final slide, I do want to draw your attention to the issue of lost emergency resource time due to hospital handover delays. Unfortunately, 23-24, we lost between 20 and 25,000 hours of response capacity each month due to these delays. This chart illustrates the correlation between the lost capacity and amber median response times. I'm sure you'll agree that the connection is clear, and these delays present two of the most significant risks to both our organisation and the patients that we serve. If you follow our Trust Board discussions, including our most recent meeting just yesterday, you'll know that we deeply focused on addressing this issue. However, it's important to acknowledge the scale of the challenge. The magnitude of the lost capacity is such that fully compensating for it is not realistically achievable. Nonetheless, we remain committed to doing what we can to minimise these delays and mitigate their impact. And with that, that concludes the update on the performance. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. So I think we're now going to go over to Liam, who's going to take us through the next few slides, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. What I would like to do is just start by highlighting some of the work we do to try and ensure that we're offering the best quality of care to the patients that we're serving. People listening will know that there was a new duty of quality introduced, and as a part of that, there were 12 health and care quality standards, which we have been assessing ourselves against, both in advance of this reporting year and through this reporting year. We have further developed our quality management systems and framework, and we have seen significant service improvement and innovation across all of the services that Lee has just highlighted. We recognise that we don't always get it right as an organisation, and that there are times when we need to be open and honest with the people we're serving, people who we haven't been able to ensure the best quality of care to. And so we have committed to the duty of candour in full vigour and sought to support people that we need to in that space. We also listen to the people that we've served, and obviously have the feedback, as I've identified, through the duty of candour, through putting things right. But also we've been taking the time to go out into the communities, listen to community groups, reach out into schools, and to really get a sense of people's understanding of our organisation, how we might be able to improve. But also, as again Lee mentioned earlier, look for opportunities to work in partnership to ensure the well-being and a good response when somebody falls unwell or makes contact with us. We've introduced a new quality impact assessment, so we've always done them as an organisation, but we have strengthened our approach to that, and we have been running those through the year for all of the significant service change and developments that have been undertaken. And we've published a number of annual reports which are available on our website through, for example, in safeguarding health, welfare and safety. And at the bottom of this slide, there is a link to our duty of quality annual statement, which I hope people might find to be an interesting read. However, what we do know is that, as Lee highlighted, we lose an awful lot of hours to people being delayed in transfer of care to the emergency department. And for us, that was nearly 72,000 patients who waited over an hour outside the ED, and that has a consequence for us in being able to respond. So we had around about 108,000 patients where we were unable to send an ambulance, or the patient cancelled the ambulance for themselves and determined that they were going to find healthcare by their own means. And we're very acutely aware that we have had a number of significant harm and catastrophic harm as a result of not being able to respond in the way that we would want to. I would like to give assurance to people who are listening to us that in all of the instances where we do identify that harm has occurred, where we've not been able to respond, we work hand in glove with our health board partners. We really seek to understand if there was anything we could have done differently, if there was anything they could have done differently to have mitigated that risk. Often it is the case that the pressures in the system mean there is not a lot different that could be done in isolation of us, for us by ourselves in isolation. It's very much about the pressures in the system. And how does this kind of manifest itself? So we're really clear the level of patient harm experience for patients calling into the 999 service in particular is too high. We have responded to over 400 coroner requests, and many of them are complex. They obviously have questions for our organisation, but they are also things that we have to work on with our partners to really try and give clarity to families about what's happened, and importantly seek to give assurance that we are doing all that we can to minimise the risk of future harm. As a result of those coroner inquests, we have had 9 Regulation 28s. So these are notices by the coroner informing us of action that they believe we could take to prevent future deaths. And as you would expect, we take all action we can to comply with those prevention of future death notices. And then for our Putting Things Right team, we had 36 cases that were referred to the Public Service Ombudsman in the period, which is a reduction and is testament to the work that the Putting Things Right team is doing to ensure that when we are responding to those concerns, we're doing it as effectively and as compassionately as we are able to. The difficulty for us is often that due to the volume and due to the complexity, we are often delayed in getting the level of response that people are seeking, and so the majority of the referrals that we receive are as a result of our timeliness. So, Andy.
Yeah, I'll pick up from here then. Good morning, everybody, again. So I'm going to briefly talk on and touch upon our clinical indicators, which essentially are a measurement of how we're delivering some of our clinical care. Keen attendees might remember this is the 2nd year of our use of electronic patient records, and we've been doing a great deal to try and refine the way that the electronic patient record captures some of the interventions that our clinicians are undertaking on a day-to-day basis. So the 2 graphs you'll see on there are one of our clinical indicators in respect of return of spontaneous circulation. So that relates to our performance in successfully resuscitating people. And the other chart at the bottom refers to the care package that we're delivering in respect to stroke patients. Both of these require not only the clinical intervention to take place, but then accurate documentation on the electronic patient record so as we can capture that information to measure how we're doing in terms of delivering against that. Now, as we've seen in other organisations that have moved from a paper-based system to an electronic one, there is a lag in terms of people starting to get used to using the electronic system and ensuring we capture that information. And we've seen some of that this year in terms of how we're recording that documentation. So we've done a number of deep dives and looked at the standard of clinical care we're delivering, and we have some confidence that where we've had lags and underperformance in terms of these indicator bundles, that this is as a result of the documentation and not as a result of a deficit in clinical care. So that gives me a great deal of reassurance that we are still delivering the same kind of care as we were doing before. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we sit back and just accept how it is. So towards the latter end of this financial year, we've done a great deal of work on developing an improvement plan to start to push on through as to how we're capturing that. And that's made some changes to the electronic patient record to prompt people in terms of documenting things correctly, and also a great deal of communications with our operating clinicians to try and capture some of that. And I'm pleased to say that we're starting to see the fruits of that labour, both in the latter end of this year, but then further into the current financial year, where as the slide documents there, we've seen some of our highest ROSC performance to date, and also some continued improvement in terms of our documentation of the stroke clinical indicator. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll now pass over to Angie to pick up the next couple of slides on our people.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andy. Really delighted to talk to you today about our people. In particular, a couple of key slides to go through, but a couple of graphs here as well for you. Really good to show that we have doubled our advanced paramedic practitioner workforce, which was a key objective within our strategy. Alongside that, we've also focused on retaining our staff, and really good to see on here that our turnover rates have reduced during the period. In particular, we've placed a real emphasis on understanding why colleagues are deciding to leave WAST. And we've also ensured we've invested in induction and onboarding for new staff, checking in with them regularly and offering additional support to them, particularly during their first year with us. Next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. Alongside that, one of our key priorities is absence management. We really know that this is a key indicator and it really affects the ability of our staff to be available to the communities they serve. We're really pleased that we've seen a reduction in our sick absence, and I think it's important to note that 24.93% of our staff took no sick leave at all during this period. We've seen a steady reduction and we've used our policies appropriately and compassionately, and we've equipped our managers with the skills to support staff who are unwell and obviously bring them back to work at the right time and keep them in work wherever possible. We've also provided a range of health and wellbeing support and initiatives to help our staff. As a result of all these efforts, the results are positive and they continue to be an area of focused attention, whilst we also recognise that the daily lived experience of our staff can be very challenging and we need to do everything possible to make their working lives better. Next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. Another key area that's linked to that reduction in sick absence is the fact that we've been able to boost our emergency medical service ambulance production in terms of hours. This is a real obvious positive metric, but it's also really clean that we, against this backdrop, in March, March 22, we delivered 110, just over 110,000 hours, and this increased to 119,000 hours at the end of March 23. Overall, during this period, our volumes of recruitment reduced, and I think that's really important to note. But we were pleased to welcome 84 newly qualified paramedics following a big bang recruitment event. And we also welcomed 94 new colleagues to our emergency medical service coordination service, 78 new starters to the 111 service, and 51 new colleagues to our ambulance care team. So they were really great and we really welcomed those new colleagues. Next slide, please, Alex. Finally, in relation to our people, we're really focused on our performance appraisal and development reviews. These are seen as a really positive indicator of staff development at an organisational level. And although we were disappointed that at the end of the year we didn't achieve our target of 85%, we were really pleased to see that there has been a consistent improvement. We continue to make this a real focus, and linked to this, we have invested significantly in skills development for new and established managers. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to
me. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I just wanted to present two slides to focus on some of the work we're doing from a value and sustainability perspective in a slightly different way, maybe taking the opportunity of the fact that I've already presented the accounts, so the money and the delivery of our statutory duties from a money perspective and the value that we get from that, as you've already seen. I just wanted to focus on value and sustainability in an ever so slightly different lens. Value from the perspective of what we're able to achieve in the organisation for what is sometimes a relatively small amount of money in the scale of the money that NHS Wales spends, and sustainability, in particular looking at our commitment to delivering on our decarbonisation action plan and in being environmentally sustainable going forward. So this slide here, which I'm not going to go through line by line, but it just gives a couple of examples of money that we've received, a relatively small amount in the scheme of things from Welsh Government from a capital perspective within that capital expenditure limit I gave reference to earlier, particularly focusing on some of the retrofitting work and some of the work that we want to do to deliver on some of what are known as EFAB, which is the Estates and Facility Advisory Board, but it's specific money that's been provided to the NHS for either retrofitting premises and estate to make them more environmentally friendly and delivering on some of our decarbonisation targets, or helping with some of our backlog maintenance. And I am pleased to sort of note that, organisationally, our level of backlog maintenance of our estate has massively reduced, over 2/3 in the last 5 to 6 years. We've still got work to go, and we still got parts of the estate that needs to be improved, and we will. Anybody who runs any estate will always have backlog maintenance. But as we got 120, 130 sites across Wales, we're doing pretty well to keep up with the condition of the vast majority of our estate. And the other thing we've noted fairly recently through some of our committee and board discussions is that money that we have received has not only reduced the total, but has also reduced the higher level of risk areas. So we are targeting the small resource that we get to get the greater benefit from it. If you just go to the next slide, Alex, the other one. Another area, and it's not just used about our capital in this way, some of our revenue funding. And again, I'm not going to go through this line by line, but again, it's just another set of examples across, a multitude of sites that we've got that we've used some revenue money that we've had available to us in year to do some more smaller grade work. But for our staff is really, really important. Replacing the kitchen in a station, doing some work on a garage door, doing some work with the heating, doing a bit of flooring, a bit of painting and decorating, replacing a roof. It makes so much difference to the environment of our people working in as I say, 120, 130 sites across Wales of very, very varying differences in size and configuration. And finally, just the result of all that is we have started to see some positive headlines in terms of our emissions. You can see some emissions there at the bottom linked to waste, but on top of that, we've recently had reported through to us that we are seeing somewhere in the region of over a 20% reduction in our emissions related to fossil fuel heating and lighting and utilities at our sites. So moving from sort of gas powered, if you like, to more sustainable. That is offset by the move to more cleaner, electrical based, sustainable power sources. But then in that context, we're also offsetting some of that by generating quite a bit of our own now where we can with PV and battery storage. So again, long way to go and a long way to go to deliver on our overall decarbonisation targets, but it's going in the right direction. And if you think this is in the context as well, as we've already described, of a growing organisation, so if we set some of those are the headline total values against the baseline of 5-6 years ago. If you did it on a like-for-like basis for the size of the organisation and the number of people we've got, the number of sites we've got, the number of vehicles we've got, the reduction on a like-for-like basis would be even greater. Long way to go, as I say, and in particular excited about what we're looking to develop in terms of our fleet going forward. But just a small number of examples of where we are making some inroads into what we want to achieve. I think I'm handing over back. Is it to you now, Andy, for another slide?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Chris, and morning again, everybody. Yeah, so in terms of our delivery of clinical care, we are more than just ambulances, and our intention is to manage more and more people without needing to deploy an emergency ambulance to ensure we maintain that capacity to respond to the most critically ill people. So something we've been really working on in this and previous years is pushing our rate of consultant close. So that's managing people remotely on the phone where they don't need an emergency ambulance and where other parts of the community setting or other healthcare provision might be better suited for their presenting complaint. So with our ambition to reach 15% of our total call volume being managed through a consultant close, we came achingly close to doing that last year, and in fact achieved it as we went into April of this year. So a real good performance from the team in terms of how they pushed in doing that and working to increase those consultant close rates. And you'll see that across in the performance in the chart on the left hand side. Excuse me. Going across to the chart on the right hand side, what we also look at is the total number of conveyances where we've taken people to other parts of the system and not just to the front doors of an emergency department. And you can see there's been an increase over the period where we've managed people in a different way, away from the front doors of ED, which essentially starts to ease, hopefully, some of the pressure that we're seeing in terms of those front door delays that Liam talked about in the earlier slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning, everybody, again. So part 2 of the annual report is the accountability report, and that provides some insight into the leadership that drives our board's vision and strategic direction, including the pivotal roles and responsibilities of the board, of our chair, Colin Dennis, and our accountable officer, Jason Killens. The architecture of the trust's governance structures are included in this part of the annual report, and we draw out here the important role of our board committees, the part that they play in ensuring oversight, accountability, openness and transparency. Full details of the work of the committees and of our advisory group are set out in this report in some detail, and you'll see from that we hold robust and structured reviews of the effectiveness of our board and its committees annually, which really shines a light on our commitment to excellence and our duty of quality. The Trust Board and its committees held each of their scheduled meetings and their development sessions in 2023-24 and were quorate for each of those. The membership of our board for that financial year is shown in the Director's report of the Accountability Report, as are the declarations that members have made on the public record of their interests and their remuneration for that year. The Accountability Report sets out the ways in which we actively and effectively manage risk to successfully deliver our services and achieve our strategic objectives, and our key risks are also set out in the report. The Head of Internal Audit Opinion for 23-24 reported that the board could take reasonable assurance on our governance and risk arrangements, and the Audit Wales structured assessment was positive and indicated an improvement in the Trust's overall governance, in the operations of the board and committee meetings, and ensuring there is effective oversight in key areas. Taken together, they really affirm the soundness of our governance framework. Finally, the staff report draws out the work we've been doing to foster a safe, inclusive work environment, including speaking up safely, active bystander and allyship training, as well as initiatives to focus on equality, diversity and inclusion, including our WAST Voices networks. Andy, I think I'm handing back to you now for the spotlight.
Yes, thanks, Trish. And it's a great deal of pleasure of the opportunity to introduce this and introduce a member of my team, Ed O'Brien, in respect to some of the work we've been doing around palliative care. So I have no intention of stealing his thunder, but suffice to say, this is some absolutely groundbreaking work that we've been doing across the country. Actually, we even had contact just this morning from colleagues across in Australia wanted to know more about some of the work we're doing around palliative care. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ed to kind of take us through this element of the presentation.
Oh, thanks, Andy. So I guess I want to start this short presentation just by mentioning a few of the initiatives that have been introduced by WAST over the last few years. And these are some of the initiatives that have really made WAST a leader in ambulance end-of-life care. Ambulance-led end-of-life care, I should say. So you can see the top one, education. So WAST is one of the only trusts that's actually got mandatory end-of-life care training. So that's all new starters. So regardless of ambulance, regardless of clinical grade, all new starters will do a session to familiarise them with end-of-life care. We also go into the university to work with our student paramedics. We've helped with Swansea University to develop placements. So before paramedics even come out onto the road, they've spent a good deal of time working with specialist palliative care teams to understand what it's all about. We've introduced e-learning, there's CPD sessions, etc., that go on where we've done this in conjunction with hospices. So we've got palliative medicine doctors working with WAST staff. You can see the NEPS end-of-life care rapid transport service. That was introduced back in 2017, and this is a service that is an essential service. So this is allows healthcare professionals to book an ambulance for a patient that is known to be dying, but is not in their preferred place of death. So, for example, they may be at their home, but they wish to be in a hospice at the point where they die. And so we've got a dedicated service that runs across Wales that can facilitate these transfers. It's done close to 5,000 journeys since it's introduced. So you can imagine the impact that's had in reducing distress for both patients and their loved ones. Just in case medications are medications that are used for urgent symptom control. These help to ensure that all paramedics in Wales can safely reduce symptoms and distress caused by that, but also by having access to these medications, it helps to promote avoidable and unwanted emergency departments admissions. WAST is currently the only ambulance trust to carry the full range of just-in-case medications on every emergency vehicle throughout Wales. The Wish ambulance, this is a particular favourite of everybody within WAST. So this allows our volunteer staff. So basically, this can be any clinician in WAST, so any clinical grade within WAST can volunteer their time to support meaningful journeys for terminally ill patients. So often when our colleagues within a hospice environment, for example, are discussing and planning with patients may say to them, I wish I could have just done this one more time. And that's where our volunteer staff come in, because they facilitate that, whatever that this is. So it might be something such as, I wish I could have seen the beach one last time. And I wish I could have got to a family wedding one last time. And our staff are going above and beyond and delivering amazing wishes. Every week, basically, it's happening all the time throughout Wales, and it's a really, really important service. The rotational palliative care paramedics. So again, WAST, the first ambulance service to introduce this. It's a 50-50 split for our staff. So the palliative care paramedics will spend half of their time working with a specialist palliative care team environment, which gives those specialist palliative care teams an urgent rapid response element, which they never previously had. But the benefit to WAST is those paramedics are, of course, gaining a lot more knowledge, confidence, and skills in relation to palliative and end-of-life care. And that's allowed WAST to sort of grow this little pool of palliative care paramedics and say, well, actually, maybe we can do something differently with these paramedics. Maybe we can offer a better service again to the patients who are needing to access 999 at the end of life. Thanks, Alex. So if we just look at the number of end-of-life care patients that are accessing 999, and this is specific to Wales. So we did a 4-year data trawl in conjunction with SAIL data. So this is looking at all of unscheduled care data, GP data, and WAST data, and putting it all together. And you can see that 9% of 999 incidents each year on average are to respond to a patient who has a palliative condition and is in their last year of life, and that's considered to be end-of-life care when they're in their last year of life. You can see that 90% of those palliative care patients were needing to access 999 in their last year of life. And on average, they were accessing this at least twice. Thanks, Alex. So when we broke it down by at what point were they ringing us, you can see that 22% were accessing us in their last 2 days of life and 32% in their last 7 days of life. So I think that really highlights that WAST is absolutely supporting patients who are in crisis in their last days of life. And I think, thanks, Alex. So what that data helps us to sort of say is, well, if statistically we're most likely to see a palliative care patient who is in their last 7 days of life, and we recognize that this is going to be point of crisis, well, if we've got this growing pool of rotational palliative care paramedics who we know have got better knowledge, skills, and confidence in comparison to a paramedic that hasn't got isn't working within a rotation with a specialist palliative care team, that's allowed us to now trial a rapid response service staffed by palliative care paramedics. So it's early days. It's only something that's been introduced within this year, so we're still building data on it. It's an additional resource, so the palliative care paramedics are manning a car or staffing a car that is over and above the normal levels of emergency ambulance vehicles. So this isn't removing one ambulance to have this. This is an additional resource. And because it's an additional resource, it's allowed us to do things slightly differently. So it's allowed us to target the palliative and end-of-life care calls. And so the palliative care paramedics are working together with the advanced paramedic practitioners. So one of the systems that the advanced paramedic practitioners run in the South Central region, so particularly in the Swansea Bay area, is basically where you've got APPs, advanced paramedic practitioners, who are constantly scanning for what can we do differently with calls, how can we best help that patient. And whenever an end-of-life care or palliative care patient is identified, they're able to dispatch a palliative care paramedic to that incident. But as well as being able to dispatch a palliative care paramedic to that incident, if an emergency ambulance crew has already arrived at an incident that is likely a palliative or end-of-life care scenario, they're able to request that the palliative care paramedic backs them up, so comes to join them on scene if it's logistically possible, if they're within a certain running time or a certain distance. But they can also provide remote advice to that crew over the telephone, so the paramedic or the emergency medical technician can get in touch with the palliative care paramedic to help formulate an appropriate management plan for that patient. Thanks, Alex. So as I say, it is early days. We've looked at the first 200 incidents that have been managed by a palliative care paramedic, specifically from this response car. And you can see that 88% of all the patients that have had intervention from a palliative care paramedic have avoided an emergency department admission. So that's not only more beneficial for the patient, but equally that means an ambulance potentially has been freed up to do other work that is appropriate that an ambulance goes to and conveys to hospital, i.e. a heart attack, for example, because, you know, it's already been mentioned about the current hospital delays. So of those 88%, 77% remained in their preferred place of care, which is likely exactly what the patient wanted. And the patients that are needing to be admitted, the palliative care paramedics are managing to admit them into a most appropriate ward. So that might be an oncology ward, or it might be directly to a hospice inpatient unit, for example. And so I guess in summary, this response car is better for patients, it's better for families, and it's better for the loved ones, and it's leaving them with less painful memories, I think it's fair to say, because I don't think any of us want to see our loved ones admitted to an emergency department at the end of life if it was avoidable. And so just to sort of say next steps, so we're going to continue evaluating this rapid response car, but we're also introducing a second one into a second health board area, using more of our palliative care paramedics from the growing pool that aren't currently involved in the first car. Thank you. I'll hand back to you, Andy.
I think, Andy, it's myself.
Yeah, I was about to say that, Liam, over to you.
Not at all, not at all. So I'm just going to introduce Simon, who's going to share with people the experience and the developments we've taken to support people with mental health needs. And I guess most people think about ambulance services and 999 in responding to cardiac arrest, to heart attacks, to strokes, to other major physical illnesses, but many people call us and they call the police when they are in mental health crisis. And I'm very proud to introduce Simon, who's been with us a while, and the work that he has been doing to think about how, as an ambulance service, we can respond more holistically to people who are in mental health crisis.
Thank you, Liam. Bore da pawb. Good morning, everyone. Over the last few years, Welsh Ambulance have completely turned around how we deal with mental health calls. Obviously, we're not a mental health provider, so it's really important that we use our small contact window with our callers to try and reduce risk as much as possible and safely transfer all signposts to mental health services and not simply convey to ED as we'd always done in the past. However, we find that many of our calls are now closed as the caller feels they have been listened to and have had the therapeutic input that they were looking for all along. So, with over 30,000 mental health contacts per year to 999 alone, the Welsh Ambulance Service responds to more mental health crisis calls than anyone else in Wales. Mental health demand in 111 and non-emergency patient transport is also significant. Dementia continues to be one of the 21st century's biggest healthcare challenges, and we are working towards improving the experience of people living with dementia who use our services, as well as considering the impact it will have on our workforce. Welsh Ambulance continues to improve our response to people with mental health conditions and dementia. The plan is to continue and develop engagement and consultation across Welsh Ambulance Service and external stakeholders, as well as service users and carers within it. We set out high-level objectives and a detailed plan to improve mental health and dementia services for people across Wales of all ages who call 111 or 999. The mental health and dementia team works collaboratively with senior managers and colleagues within Welsh Ambulance to promote a positive mental health culture at each level of the organisation. External partnership working is also integral to the team's role. So we've recruited and trained mental health practitioners to deliver high quality hear and treat services to people who call 999. This is in order to help people with mental health problems in more effective ways than just directing them, as I said, to ED. The implementation has improved our hear and treat outcomes for people who call 999 in mental health and dementia crisis. We continue to support clinically supervised deliver on ongoing learning and audit for mental health practitioners as part of the team and working in hear and treat roles. Over the last 24 months, mental health practitioners have been employed by the Trust and have been inducted, signed off and clinically supported by us in the mental health team. Mental health practitioners are line managed by the operations service, however, they're clinically supervised by the mental health directorate. The impact of the practitioners has been fantastic, to be honest. Looking at the data for the hours that they only cover, as they only work at present from 1 p.m. until 1 a.m. 7 days a week. There's a significant change in the consultant close rate for psychiatric calls. Mental health practitioners on average achieving a consultant close rate of circa around 41%. Mental health practitioners are twice as likely to consult and close, as they tend to use less ambulance resources and refer people directly to psychiatric services for assessment. We're planning in the future to develop the service further, obviously down to funding, and we will hope to increase the cover to 24/7. The mental health and dementia team also provide numerous useful training for further clinical staff on how we deal with our callers. So we've got extensive online e-learning that we've built, which you can use as part of your CPD. We're covering topics regarding mental health legislation, mental health awareness, self-harm, substance misuse, suicide intervention, amongst many other topics that are helpful to all our call handlers and paramedic staff. And we provide paramedic mental health training. The mental health and dementia team continue to provide ongoing support to the development of mental health curriculum for undergraduate paramedic students in partnership with Swansea University. We've been rolling out a programme of suicide first aid with the mental health team. Currently, with a target of rolling this out to 90% of the Welsh Ambulance employees. Suicide first aid courses run once a week and can accommodate up to 16 members at a time. Currently, these are being run virtually, but we are looking to rolling these out face-to-face sometime in the future. Over the last couple of months, we've run a exciting mental health response vehicle pilot in Aneurin-Bevan. We've decided to run this after it's been rolled out mainly amongst pretty much all of the English ambulance services, and we've decided to run a short pilot over the end of the last financial year. Like I said, with Aneurin-Bevan, we secured short-term winter pressure monies, and we negotiated direct mental health pathways with the health board. We ran a 9-week pilot that ran from 1 p.m. till 12 a.m. Friday to Sunday between January and March, the start of this year, and we had a fantastic outcome just in that short period, really. So we had a huge benefit to patients and staff, where we had a 74% treatment close rate, with only 19% of patients conveyed to ED. All those were regarded as appropriate because they had a physical need that needed to be attended to. We had zero serious incidents. It was extremely positive from both staff and patients. We conveyed 7% of callers to mental health services, which is primarily inpatient, and the rest of the calls were basically signposted or arranged follow-up with services that they were already open to, or indeed just seeking out urgent or just support with family and relatives that were needed at that time. So the projects that we've run have been a huge success, and we demonstrated how working in partnership across other organisations can achieve significant success through overcoming barriers, and when they arise, mental health patients can face long waits and psychological hardships while they're waiting for treatment, where we've realised and proven that mental health response vehicles and mental health practitioners in the CSD can provide not only rapid response assessments, but can also provide a therapeutic intervention to those patients, thereby improving quality of care to mental health patients and releasing further ED and ambulance resources to the general public. Hopefully, adopting and rolling out these models across Wales and around the clock would have added benefit of reducing pathway inequalities to mental health care and currently exists across most of the health boards. So now, after such a successful response to the mental health response vehicle, we are looking at rolling out eventually a national model, but in our next plan and the next stage of the vehicle, we're currently with plans to roll out a vehicle working with Cwmtaf, Cardiff and Vale and Aneurin Bevan. We'll be covering the same hours from 1 p.m. until 1 a.m. But the vehicle will be running 7 days a week at this time. And obviously off the back of that, we're hoping to undertake further studies and collect further data with the end result of hoping to be able to prove and have enough provision to roll out nationally this exciting new project. As well as having mental health practitioners in the control room, we found out that the increasing help of this increases the confidence in control room staff and road room staff when helping with mental health patients and callers. So, future plans for the vehicle is we have now got a task and finish group in the process of rolling out the current plan. Hopefully this will be up and running in the next few months, so will help with winter pressures. Could the next slide please, Alex?
I think we had the right slide up, Simon.
Oh, sorry, it's not sure. It hasn't. Oh, right, that's it. Sorry, I think I had a bit of lag. It wasn't up on mine. So yes, so I think we've gone through some of that featured plans and direction for the mental health response vehicle. Obviously, we're trying to address the geographical differences that we have throughout Wales. Some of the more rural areas and things that would be a problem for the mental health response vehicle. But as I say, hopefully we can roll this out now to some of the more built up areas and provide a better service for our mental health patients.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon and Ed. Great initiatives there, and good to hear the positive impact they're having for our patients across Wales. Rachel, we're over to you now for the forward look.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm just going to take a few moments to look forward. We've had some great discussions so far on the year that's just gone and all the great work that the organisation has done. But I'll just take us to look forward a little bit. We do have a long-term strategy. It's called Delivering Excellence, and it was published in 2019. And that really sets out an ambition for us to move beyond just being a traditional ambulance and transport service to a trusted provider of high quality care. I think we can see that in the presentations that we've had from Ed and Simon today in terms of how we're really delivering on some of that ambition. And the key here is for all of the patients who use our services to make sure that they're getting the right care or advice in the right place and every time. And our integrated medium-term plan, which is a requirement from Welsh Government, is a 3-year plan that really sets out, I suppose, the steps over the next 3 years that take us towards those longer-term ambitions. If I could move on, please, Alex. So in terms of our plan for 2024 to 27, I'm really pleased to be able to say that having submitted that to Welsh Government at the end of March this year, it was approved in August by the Cabinet Secretary, and that's really important to us as an organisation. It means that there's a confidence that the plans we put forward are robust, they're financially viable, and they address all of the issues that Welsh Government expect us to address. But the plan is also something very much for us as an organisation to guide us. As we develop the plan, I just wanted to kind of note that it's really important that we take account of and listen to the voices of our patients. So if you take a look at our plan on our website, you'll see there's a lot of information there about what patients and users of our services are saying and how they want our services to be improved. We also take a lot of account in terms of what our colleagues, our people are saying, where they think they can see areas for improvement. And again, I'll just reference the fact that we've heard great presentations today from Ed and from Simon, and you can see the passion for improving services to our patients that come from our staff, and we listen to those ideas and we wrap them into our plan. And we also need to take account in our plan of our commissioners' intentions and the Welsh Government's strategic direction. So all of those things get considered in the round as we develop our plan. And as you'd expect in any plan for a large organisation, there is a lot in it. There's loads of ideas, initiatives, improvements, and to help make sense of that, we tried to identify, I suppose, the 3 focuses for this year. And the first one is around, our plan has got to transform the way we deliver care for patients, and that really relates to some of the work, some of the information that was provided earlier on by Lee, where we know that our service is not quite where we want it to be for our patients. So we've got to do more to transform the way we deliver care. But we also equally know that it's important to improve the working environments for our people, because our people are the people who deliver that care for patients. And the last focus we pulled on this year was that we need to create a sustainable organisation, not just from a financial perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. And that's a key priority for the organisation, for Welsh Government, for the world as we move forward. Thank you. Next slide. So just a couple of slides then on how we're going to be changing things we're going to be doing to transform the way we provide care to our patients. And this is just a slide, I think, which talks to the fact that in the past, perhaps we've seen ourselves as 3 distinct services: the services, our 999 services, our 111 services, and our ambulance care services. And increasingly, we're seeing perhaps a wider offer. So we have a digital arm to our services. Yes, we have an emergency response service, but we also have a growing remote integrated care services, clinicians who sit in our contact centres who can work with patients remotely and provide a great service. And then, of course, an increasing number of other offers, and Ed and Simon both talked about great examples of responses in the community that are different from an emergency ambulance, but provide a really great offer for patients. So increasingly we're seeing these services more connected as well together, and certainly being developed in collaboration with the wider health and social care system, our health board partners, our local authorities, and our third sector partners. Thank you. So as we develop our thinking in terms of what we might do differently to improve the way that we provide services to patients, with this concept of right care and advice, right place every time at the centre of our thinking, One of the things we're looking to do is to become more clinically led as an organisation. And an example of that is that we're employing an additional 28 people this year, clinical navigators. That's a new role. These experienced staff will sit within our control centres, and they will be screening the majority of our 999 calls at a very early stage. So at the moment, our calls are taken by non-clinicians, call handlers, and this clinical navigator role will really add some clinical decision making and insight very early into the pathway to make sure we're getting the right pathway for each of our patients. We're increasingly moving then to a care planning approach, and over the course of this year, our remote clinicians are going to be assessing more fully more of our 999 patients, again trying to make sure that we find with patients the right pathway to meet their needs. We're increasingly looking to connect our services, as I've mentioned. So we want to move to a position where it doesn't matter whether you come to us via a digital route, via 111, via 999, we will get you to the right pathway that is needed. And as an example of that, we in the past, patients who ring 111 have had access to certain health board pathways that hasn't been available for patients who've rung 999. And that's, we're really pleased to say that from the beginning of October, health boards have worked with us and ensured that our 111 patients and our 999 patients have access to the same pathways within health boards, which makes a lot of sense. We want to make sure that there's much more choice and options available to patients. Again, I'm just going to bring out one here that Simon's already talked about, that opportunity to create mental health response vehicles across Wales. We'll have one of them implemented this year, but that's an addition to the service that we provided in the past, and that mental health expertise really offering opportunities to do things better for patients in mental health crisis. And the last two then are around collaboration and working with health boards, really, because none of this can be done on our own. We work within a health system, and that collaboration with health boards is really important. We complement the services that health boards provide, and there are workshops ongoing all the time, really, in terms of making sure that we find opportunities to work better with our health boards. So if I move on to the next slide, thank you. So I said the second focus for us was around our people and making sure we're creating a really great working environment. And to pull out a couple of things from our plan, we want to make sure that we're working on creating safe working environments. So as part of that work, we're strengthening our capacity to drive culture change. So we've been training people to be culture champions. We've been supporting people to be change agents. We know we want to amplify and develop and hear more from all of our people, whether that's employed staff or volunteers. We have a series of networks, voices networks they're called, where people can talk to us about issues that relate to them. We go around the whole of Wales twice a year through CEO roadshows, and we listen to staff at each of those. We've got a number of initiatives around freedom to speak up, so that our people feel safe to tell us where things are not right. So we're working very hard on improving our culture. We're also working on the capacity within our organisation, and we're really pleased this year that we've agreed that we will be introducing rebounding our technicians into a band 5 role, which is really good news. But we need to make sure that the capacity we do have is working really effectively, and so we've got a real focus on getting the basics right, so that our people, when they come to work, can get on with the work without being frustrated by some of the systems around them. And so, for example, we're looking to improve how we simplify the use of all of the different devices and systems that people have to use, and things like that. And then lastly, focusing on the capability of our workforce. And I'm just going to pull out here, there's lots going on in this area, but pulling out the fact that we want to develop the capability of our leaders and managers, nurturing the leaders of the future, and are developing a new framework, a development framework called the WAST Way, which will start us on that journey. So lots in our people space. I'll go on to the next slide, please. And then I talked about the third focus, which is around becoming a sustainable organisation. We've had a financial sustainability programme working for the last couple of years, which has really helped us to ensure that we've broken even, and that work will continue. And it focuses on a whole range of things across the organisation. Just pulling out a couple of things there. You know, we know that it's always important to look at how we roster our staff to make sure that the people, you know, who are on shift are there at the times when people need us. So we're doing some work to relook at our rosters in our 111 and our NEPS service. We did a big piece of work last year looking at our administrative functions across the organisation, and there's recommendations there to be taken forward this year. But as I say, value and sustainability isn't all just about efficiency and money. It's also about the environmental sustainability, and we will be focusing this year on refreshing our decarbonisation action plan, and also developing plans that make sure we're able to adapt to the changing climate as it unfolds. Thank you. And our plan, I won't go into a huge amount of detail on this, but there, you know, with those are the three main focuses, but there is a huge amount of other things that the organisation is doing. So we, you may have seen yesterday, I think Jason, you put it onto social media. We approved a strategic workforce plan at our board yesterday. Johnny launched our new digital plan last week. I know that Liam is working on the quality plan and a refresh of that, because that's now time to refresh that together with our clinical plan. And so there's a huge amount of additional work that goes on in a range of other areas of the organisation. And I think the last slide just pulls out, if I can, Alex, the fact that clearly, as Chris has already talked about, there's continuing work to improve our estate, to make sure that our fleet is up to date, and that we're kind of innovating in terms of our fleet solutions. And lastly, you know, it's the working in partnership is a really important part of our plan, and we have very robust plans in terms of how we engage with both our commissioners, Welsh Government, health boards, and the public and our staff. And that is an ongoing piece of work which makes sure that every year as we refresh our plans, they take into account all of those wider views. So I think that's the end of my forward look. So I'm handing over, I think, just to Chris, who's just going to touch on the financial plan for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, just one slide to me to conclude. And clearly, as I think you mentioned earlier, Rachel, as part of that plan, it's underpinned and needs to be underpinned by a balanced financial plan to make it approvable in the way that we've had the plan overall approved. And that does get more challenging every year. It gets harder and harder in the current financial climate. But we have again achieved at least the ability to submit as part of our plan for the current financial year a balanced financial plan which the Trust Board approved in March. It was submitted as part of that IMTP, as I say, and has undergone some scrutiny as part of the overall scrutiny process. It does include funding uplifts for inflationary pressures and avoidable costs that are in line with the uplift that all of our commissioning bodies and health boards within NHS in Wales receive through an allocation letter uplift from government. But it needs and continues to need significant efficiency, productivity, cost avoidance, cost savings to balance. We did have the budget that flows from that also approved at the Trust Board in March, and quite an important sort of governance perspective then is those budgets get devolved down with discussions between myself and Jason as chief executive and accountable officer for the organisation, to directors to formally sign them off. And just a final quick update is pleased to report that currently, you know, we reported a month 5 position to our board yesterday. We're obviously nearly at month 6, so we're almost exactly halfway through the financial year. And again, month on month, we've continued to deliver that financial balance and are currently forecast to do so through the 24-25 financial year. There are some risks to doing so. There always are. There are risks and assumptions within that forecast balance position that we need to mitigate those risks through the winter and the second half of the year and make sure with some of those assumptions, particularly around some funding levels, are achieved to allow us to continue that good track record that we've had for a number of years now in terms of financially balancing. That was all I was going to say to underpin some of that from a financial perspective, and I think I'm handing to Estelle.
Thanks, Chris, and good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for sticking with us for the last, I guess, hour and 20 minutes. We hope that you found all that helpful and that there was something of interest for you in the presentations. Just to say thank you very much to two members of the public who are watching via the Facebook live stream. That's Paul and Louise, who've put some very positive comments in the comment section on Facebook. So thank you very much for that. We actually haven't had this morning any questions about the presentation or any other questions for us at this AGM. So I would like to encourage everybody to join us at our board, which happens roughly every couple of months, where you can also pose any question that you may have. If you keep an eye out on our website and on our social media, you should be able to find details of the next board and also how to pose your questions to us. So thank you very much for sticking with us. Chair, I think I'm handing back to you. So I'll hand over to you if I may.
Thank you very much, Estelle. Thank you very much, everybody else. It just remains for me to say a very big thank you to all the contributors. A very big thank you to Alex behind the scenes, who I know has worked really hard in getting everything organised for this and pushing all the buttons, keeping the slides moving as we work through. One of our very many unsung heroes in the background. So thank you, Alex, for all the work that you have done. Thank you for the panelists. And most important of all, of course, thank you to all of the people outside who've been contributing and watching to this AGM. It is available, of course, on video for people to watch again if they wish to. So I think all that remains for me to do is to say once again, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and I declare this AGM to be over. Goodbye and thank you.